Just Us, the Just Us League. All right, are we official? Should I clap? There it is. There's the clap. It's a clap. I clapped again. Did
you clap on 1 or 2 or 4 or what'd you do?
I clapped on 13 out of a bar of 1916.
Perfect.
So, yeah, duh. That's where it always comes in. You never let your friends clap on 12. Always make sure you do it on
13 out of 19. I've had an idea for like a multiple series of records to just stay in like some time signature.
Through the entire thing?
Yeah, every song is in 5 or every song is in 13 or every song is in whatever. And just make it so it feels normal. And not like to be like weird either. Like to actually make it where you're like, hey, this grooves, like the whole album grooves or whatever. And you're like, holy cow, it's actually all in 13 or whatever.
That would be great. Why do it in 4? I mean, everybody has an album full of 4.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, yeah. That's kind of what I was thinking. So that's a goal.
Mark it down for the contest.
That's right.
So here we are on episode 3 of Wood, Air, and Metal for 2022, season 2 in 2022. It's crazy. It's almost February 2nd.
I know. Yeah, it's funny. I have a gig February 2nd, which is this 2222022 or whatever.
Yep. It's yeah. I was gonna say it's an anagram or the flippable thing. Anagram, is that it? Anagram?
Yeah, is it?
Palindrome? Is it palindrome? Is it going to be that? No, I don't know. Complicated words. Late at night.
Too late for that.
Yeah, too many new students, which is not a bad problem. So it's with all of our wonderful sicknesses and.
Don't worry, they'll be gone in a month or so.
Yeah, at my rate, you have failed me. Get out. Oh no. Oh man, it's good. It's exciting. So I like that. It's a lot, but I'm not looking forward to the end of this week when we're supposed to get nailed with snow and I got to drive an hour and a half each way. I'm like, this could be interesting.
Yeah. So in our part of the world, it's just been snowing like endlessly. But
yeah, which it normally does, but it's been easy lately. Like the last couple of years have been really easy. This year,
I feel like this is the most we've had that I can really remember.
When I first moved to this place, we got nailed, and that was like 7 years ago.
Maybe, yeah, it's kind of a hit or miss. Anyway, hey, good to see everyone. It's been we actually haven't recorded one this year in 2022 yet. So
that's right.
We hope you enjoyed the new interviews, but those were actually recorded last year.
Those are good. That was fun. It's hysterical though. You get in front of your old professor and he's still intimidating. It's like it's been a year that it's like, God, did I say something weird?
How'd we do, Steve? Well,
exactly.
You might want to take it back to the drawing board.
And you might want to use a metronome next time. So,
have you guys even rehearsed this at all?
No. That was half of a bourbon talk. Knob Creek, mind you. So got to keep that going. So much has happened in a good way. Spherical's Agenda album came out. And that was fantastic.
Yeah,
it was great.
Make sure you check out that episode if you haven't. Amazing fusion band from Cincinnati, believe it or not.
Yeah. No. Well, hey, Cincinnati's in the Super Bowl of all crazy.
Oh, yeah,
things.
That's right. So yeah, maybe you do believe it.
I would. I mean, good Lord, I don't even watch the games. I just all my fantasy football leagues, but I jump in just for bragging rights.
Do you have fantasy football still through playoffs?
No. But the league still comments on all the games and everything, and then somebody started doing that.
Like pick 'em sort of thing or something.
Yeah, the FanDuel thing. So I jumped in on that, and it got promptly destroyed because I was like, this guy and this guy and this guy, because I'm too busy practicing to worry about football or something like that.
I'm so out of it now. I couldn't tell you one player on any of the teams, and the only reason I know that Cincinnati and LA Rams play is that my siblings all do like food. Like the way they do the Super Bowl is like, if Cincinnati and LA are there, then they're gonna make food the day that's like Cincinnati and LA food. That's the only.
Okay.
So they're like, oh man, what are we gonna do for, Cincinnati's easy. LA is kind of a weird mishmash of things.
Whoa, wait, Cincinnati is weird. What does Cincinnati have for food?
They have chili.
Okay, I didn't know that.
They're also relatively known for ribs.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, I'm cool with that.
And then Yeah, so they have that like weird cinnamon chili thing or whatever. You ever had that?
Can't say that I have.
You haven't? Like,
No.
you've never gone to Skyline Chili?
No, I mean I passed the Skyline. I probably passed several.
Oh, you have to go sometime just because it's weird.
Now I have to. Like now I just gotta
Yeah,
try
so
it.
it's like a Cincinnati
cinnamon?
staple. So they do like a cinnamon-based sort of chili thing. It's pretty weird. And then they
Alright.
usually put it on like spaghetti.
All right, that's just insulting. That's insulting to my people.
I know, but it's a thing though, you know. Like whatever. It's like having pizza in Chicago. It's different.
Yeah, I know. Listen, I'm all about starting when you're in a town. You get that town's food. There's the reason why it's on the map.
Sure.
Stuff like that. So.
Anyway, Cincy representing, I guess.
Yep.
All right, what
Yeah.
else? Continue. So,
So what else? So
Agenda.
Spherical Agenda came out with their thing. Trying to think by the end of the year. What else?
Oh, by the end of the year. So you're saying not something that just came out?
Not something that just came out. I mean, whatever we can recall, because there's a... Wait, I can just open my iTunes, and that will tell me. Or iTunes. Dated myself. It's Apple Music now. Let's see. We got... Paul Gerobert had a Christmas album, which I kind of listened to once.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I got to give it a couple of more listens.
Next Christmas.
Yeah, next Christmas, exactly. And that's pretty much the only ones that I really like. I pulled up.
So didn't you say Big Rec put something out, right?
Yeah, Big Rec. Oh yeah, that's right. Big Rec came out with something on like December 21st or something like that.
Yeah.
It's an EP. I haven't listened to it yet. It's just sitting there in the library. But let's see. The big like guitar news, at least for me, is the new Vi album dropping.
Yeah.
Over the last Friday, which was perfect because I started the drive and it's like sweet. I listened to the album and I got through it like the first time. And car driving is always hit or miss. Like it's tough to really experience it.
Yeah, sure.
At the level that I would like. And so I listened to it and I'm like, all right, it's another Vi album. It's cool. I like it better than the last one, Modern Primitive. And we'll kind of like, and then I got home and I threw on these and listened to it and I'm like, okay, the second time I listened to it on my HomePod when I was taking care of stuff, which is surprisingly sounds good for its size, for like what you expect. It's like, oh, it has a bass presence and it's actually kind of like well done, and it hooked me a little bit more. And then the last time I listened to it, I threw these on and it was like, okay, this is cool. I mean, granted, that's the best headphones to listen to it. And then today when I was on campus, I ended up having a student cancel on a lesson, and I threw on my Nobles and put it on. And it sounded great on those, and that was really cool. So the stereo separation was much, much more prevalent on the in-ears than it has on the big guys. As much as these are, it was just
Yeah,
like
it's interesting.
clear. It's because they're in your ears, duh.
Well,
So
I mean, it's interesting that because I feel like the grottos that I have, which are over ear, are 10 times wider sounding than the Nobles.
Well, I'm not saying like in terms of the soundstage. Like I'm talking in just clearly just left and right separation.
Even there though, I think.
Really?
It sounds
All right.
way wider.
So
Yeah, that's
the
what I
Noble-
noticed when I listened
like-
to the Vi thing.
Oh no! You're right. It's not that wide. I see what you're saying now. I was strictly thinking like when something is on the right, it's really on the right, and when something
right.
is on the left, it's really on the left. And these do the same thing, but it has a little bit more blending to it. So, so that was I'm really liking it now. It's getting constantly played. I'm enjoying that a whole lot. The Archecto dropped a new single. Yeah, too many words and too much bourbon. That's pretty cool. I like their stuff. It's like happy gent. That's the only way that I can put it. And I love. Don't get me wrong. I love the metals and the dark and angry stuff. But their stuff it's cool. It's got some nice hooks to it, great grooves and so on. And I've always got a soft spot in my heart for Satriani. I grew up listening to him. And his new stuff it's more Satch, and that's not a bad thing. It's just him. So and he's just got such a distinct songwriting flavor to it. So it's only one track off. His new album comes out in April, and then Zaza dropped his first single for Premiere, and it's great. I mean, it's like all the stuff talking about like just doing rock and it's called Big Rock. And this thing is like if AC/DC had a virtuosic guitar player on there and just like stuck to the anthem style rock and roll, boom, it's there. Like it's great work with the keys and everything. It's a great track, and it sounds freaking phenomenal in these. So that's kind of like where my listening goes with that. Outside of that, the piece that I have to play at Ashland, that a procession winding around me, which is a total 180 from all the other stuff with rock guitar. This is like choir and guitar with it, and very modern. And I love, I never realized how much I missed score study of just sitting there and opening it and just, analyzing what's going on and listening to it and diving into the music.
Sure.
It's so fun. And just seeing the way that the guy separated a guitar and an orchestra in such a good way that it's balanced, and it's not just that. There's so many freaking harmonics on it for the guitar. Like, not just your 7, 12, and 5 or whatever. It's 9th fret harmonics and 4th fret harmonics. Like, all the stuff where it's like, yeah, good luck getting these to speak, especially over a choir. But where he's placed it in terms of, like, where the choir ends and the guitar comes in, just brilliant. Like, yeah, brilliantly done. It's really fun. It's also a hell of a lot of pressure because it's one guitar supporting an orchestra. So it's, I sneeze or screw up, it's like everything's just gone. Though I have noticed from every recording that I've listened to, the guitar player does it differently. Like everything, like it's never straightened in time, which is to be granted with a choir. When they take rollandandos, it's really slowing down.
Sure.
And it's follow the conductor with all that. But that's kind of comforting, that even though like they miss like one of the extended techniques, like a golpe or a tapping on the fretboard, it's like they'll strum it instead of hitting it. And I'm just like, was that a screw up? Because it's very easy to screw it up when you're reading it. My score is like highlights on every single time I'm supposed to tap just to make sure I do it.
Maybe you couldn't hear it otherwise or something.
Yeah, I don't know. No, the tap's definitely louder than the strum, no doubt. Okay. Like, and I don't mean like tapping on the strings to produce a note. I mean like a golpe, where it's just slapping the strings by the bridge. And that that was like, okay, so everybody's got their little interpretation to it. I'm going to see what the conductor exactly wants hopefully before the first rehearsal, just so I don't go in completely green and have to get that. It's like I'm playing through it now, but it's very difficult to play through it with a recording because I can't see a conductor, so I'm not sure where exactly that is. Certain things come in, but I also just got the full score with the choir and guitar, not just the guitar part, so that's making it a little bit easier. And I'm in debates right now. It's like, do I want to do the full score or do I want just the guitar part? And I'm leaning towards full score, just so I can see consistently where it all lines up.
Yeah,
because that made it a lot easier. And anyways, I'm rambling about that because I'm excited. I got asked to play it, and it's
just to level set a second, it's a really cool piece. It's basically like a choir and classical guitar piece. Mm-hmm. Like a whole set of, what is it, like 4 movements or something?
Yeah, 4 movements, about a half hour.
Yeah, and just really neat. And if you've never dug into choir music, and I know when Adam started this, there's so much good stuff. Like, especially like with harmony. Like, yeah, I'm not sure that any other and there's no instrument, I think, or even like orchestra that really represents what you can do with harmony quite as well as a choir. Like,
yeah, exactly.
There's so many like really cool, like, man, the harmony can get really thick and interesting, and like the overtones can be right because they can actually sing in pitch where like equal temperament can, and all these kind of things. So there's all these really interesting things you can do. And if you haven't done, I mean, it's like Goosebump City. If you haven't been around like amazing choir, like especially in person, it just kind of blows you away. So yeah, that's exciting. I'm excited for you.
Yeah, so am I. And the thing that like is in the back of my head, am I going to be able to hold it together, like listening to the choir? Because like just listening to the recordings every now and again, it's so moving. The subject matter is,
well, you probably just have to let yourself go.
yeah, I don't think that's a bad thing. I just don't think they want me sobbing or something. We really want you to play there, dude. It's okay, I'll get it together. But like, it's like
they'll feed off of you though. You show some tears, and then they'll show some tears, and then the crowd shows some tears, and
that's it. Yeah, everybody's looking for Kleenex.
It's like a yawn, you started a.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the poetry is from the Civil War, so it's like obviously very bleak, and talking about all that, and him sitting around, and it's very interesting to see like I don't know what side wrote the poems, like if it was the North or the South with that in that regard. But the guy
Yeah.
was just talking about like he the first one is talking about just sitting around the fire watching the army kind of move by. The second one's all about like the battle starting, you know, with drums and bugles and here we go type of thing. And the third movement is about the direct aftermath of the battle, where everything's nightfall now and everything's just kind of settling and
Yeah.
bodies everywhere and so on. And the last one's about him like coming to terms with having to kill some or having killed somebody and seeing their body in the coffin and reflecting. It's like, you know, as much as this guy was my enemy, he was still a human being. And it's like, how do I reconcile my actions with what I just did there?
So it's
And,
pretty light stuff.
yeah, it's something for kids. It's up there with Sesame Street and, you know, Happy Go Lucky Rainbows, but it's gorgeous though. Really, really, really well done.
Sure.
So
That's cool.
that's kind of like that I've been digging into with that. And then a ton of Leprous. They're my band right now. Everything's always them
Nice.
with that.
So yeah, my listening is completely the opposite of you the last two months. I've actually been re-exploring something that I just haven't spent enough time with, which was a lot of the like really classic jazz guitar player guys. It never really resonated with me when I pretty much most of my life. I mean, certain players did, like Wes Montgomery did, but like so many of the other guys before the 70s, or even before the 80s and 90s really didn't do it for me. So yeah, I just been going back and I'm like, you know what? It's time to just take the ego or whatever is in my way that's like getting in the way and just really listen to these guys. Cause I mean, there's really some great stuff. So just digging into like Charlie Christian and Grant Green. And I mean, like I learned a bunch of Grant Green stuff and just really, Grant Green's one of these guys, like you can play two notes and they're just so perfectly like in the pocket. Like, and that's it. Like, then you're like grandmaster, you know, like, duh, you know, like you just go da da or whatever. And you're like, all right, game over. Like you will never play anything better than that in your entire life. you can't actually do it because the way that he played it is just so perfect, in a sense, in terms of like the feel and the place it sits. So that kind of stuff, like I'm really going back and just, you know, just throwing myself in it. And I pretty much haven't listened to any like distorted guitar aside from the Vi thing, just because it's Vi. But I just really haven't. It kind of just doesn't sound that good to me. Like right now, I'm just in this phase where I guess I'm just tired of hearing it. Even I'm not even using it really. You know, like.
It makes sense, you know. Eventually, your ears get tired of something, and your brain and everything else gets tired of one thing. Like I'll go through phases where it's nothing but choral music,
Right.
and then I'll get into the thrash metal for nothing but that, and then I'll do a pop thing, and then I'll do a jazz thing, and then I'll go back to the metal thing or whatever. It's all a matter of things that just happen to tickle the fancy at the current.
Yeah, that's all you can do, really.
But like on that note, like just a question about listening to those older guys. Do you think? Like, do you find that the timing thing with them compared to modern players is a radical departure, or is it like something that?
Well, it's sort of interesting. So one of the things I've always struggled with particular players is their time feel is really weird. So Grant Green's not one of them. Grant Green, Wes Montgomery, these guys are just like so in the pocket in the best way. Like you're just like, man, like it's so good. But then there's other guys. I'm not gonna say their names just to not whatever. But I just really struggle with listening to them, and this is why I never really liked them. Is their time feels really weird. It's not that good, like especially compared to like horn players. And so for the longest time, I've just been like not listening to that guy. His time feels weird, you know, or something. Even though I've listened to like so many rock guitar players whose time feels stinks, but like it's like it's like a separate thing. Like where jazz, that can mean a lot more. But what I'm realizing now, by the way, like and even like I always felt like Segovia's time's weird. I'm gonna pick on somebody. Like anytime I've heard stuff, I'm always like that doesn't groove or like there's no like he's not in a pocket or anything. He never plays like.
I've found that on his recordings to be, you're absolutely right with that. And then I've
Yeah.
seen some like old video stuff of him. And because, what's the way to put it? Just because of the mythos around him.
Yeah.
And granted, most of it is absolutely warranted because he put classical guitar back on the map. There's no denying that. But I'll say like, because I have like the whole Segovia CD collection. Well, I did have it on CD. I don't know where the CD are anymore, but and I listened to all those, and I was like, okay. And then I watched pretty recently. I watched some YouTube videos just to see, because I'm like, all right, there's got to be something out there. And man, like some of the videos were absolutely stunningly good. Like
So I think
really, but vastly different than the recordings. So
that's sort of the same deal, right? Where it's like you might first hear Segovia, and you're just like, I'm not feeling it. But you would be missing a lot, right? Like you need to go back. Like as a classical guitarist in particular, right? Like Segovia is important to spend probably an enormous amount of time studying, and that's how a lot of these guys are. Like maybe I felt like their time was weird, but by doing that, then I'm like, I've just ignored like a really important chapter of like development in the language of jazz guitar. And that's what I realized is like my arrogance or something was in the way, and I've really grown to appreciate it now. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm saying like, oh, it's got the best time feel or whatever, or like that kind of thing or whatever, but I can appreciate what they were trying to do, like a lot of like voicing things and like little chord movements and all kinds. Like some of them are really creative, and like it's really interesting stuff, and if I can take that like expectations hat off and just appreciate it for what it is, it's really like opened a huge door for me. And I've learned so much about it. I've really learned a lot. Like it's really been very good for me as a musician to like go back and visit the history, and not only like I'm also telling myself like learn it, like figure it out what they're doing. Like if I hear something cool, I'm like I'm figuring it out. Yeah. Like, what is that thing? Like, maybe I didn't like the timing of it, but like that chord sequence that they did, or that little like movement or whatever, like I want that. Like that's a cool thing. I should have that in my bag of tricks or whatever. So I've really been going back and doing that, and just I've like I've been in the last like 2 months I've been filling up manuscript paper, just writing down solos, writing down chord movements, writing down, like it's just been I've been a machine lately with that stuff. And man, I've learned so much. I've learned more in the last 2 months than I have probably in the last like 10 years.
That's awesome though. That's great.
Like I've just been really like, instead of being like, and it's all about like an attitude, right? Like instead of saying like, well, there's nothing I can learn from them, I'm only going to learn from Rosenwinkel and all these cats, like the new people. But those like Rosenwinkel and those guys, they did the homework. You know what I mean? Like, so I needed to do the homework because it's just important. So there's a lot of that.
No, that kind of brings me to a thing that I was thinking about earlier today, is like, most learning, at least if I'm remembering right, happens in the frontal cortex of the brain, and as it gets repeated and more familiar and you get better at it, it moves further back with that. And I'm just wondering, like maybe this is some of the influence of some of the young that I read or read, is that like maybe collectively that also happens with like collective conscious. I know that sounds like I'm Eckhart Tolle or whatever, but I'm not even aiming at that. I'm aiming at it like psychologically as a species. Maybe because you look at that like with our interview with Steve, how he talked about like the level of playing to kids right now is just like so unbelievably high, and it's true. But I think it might be like that compression of like, as one person learning something, you get better at it, and that compresses down to something. So when you're teaching somebody else, you're giving them these nuggets that just like are 30 years of experience condensed and up there. Then they take that and they compress it even more and give that to the next generation. And at least they should. And so we're ending up like at this point in time now where you've had such a compression ratio that the growth is a direct result of that.
Yeah.
That seed.
But
is
you
so
wonder though
unbelievably
too a little bit
rough.
like what is missing, like
Yes.
why is it we like to listen to Julian Bream more than we like to listen to a new person or something. And
I like to listen to a new person more.
Well,
personally.
I'm picking somebody who's pretty popular. And,
Yeah,
and
no,
I
I get what
think
you're
that
saying.
part of it is he invented some of it. You know what I mean? Like, and you can hear it like in a sort of way, right? Like that was like going out on a limb.
Mm-hmm.
But like a new person, like they didn't have to invent anything. Like they just did it because they learned it because 17,000 people before them did it. And they just take, but like the person who like developed it or like tried it for the first time, there's like a spark or something that happens. I think in the
It's
music.
like the old. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off too much. But,
no, you're good.
It's like there's an old saying, and it's like pots are easy to make, but the guy that made the first pot definitely was thinking way ahead of his time.
Yeah, right.
It's like, and that's and that's kind of the point. We're sitting on the shoulders of giants to an extent,
Yeah.
or not to an extent, but for sure. So. That kind of ties into that article about the new old music versus the new thing. I mean, I know we were thinking of going a different direction, but this seems to tie. So let's kind of keep this.
So the Atlantic article.
The Atlantic article, the one that said, "Is old music killing new music?"
Yeah. If you haven't read this, you should go read it.
It's Google The Atlantic, is old music killing new music. And it says old songs now represent 70% of the U.S. music market. Even worse, the new music market is actually shrinking. So that's what the part of it is. And it's got a lot of depressing things in it, and to one extent. And it kind of goes with like the whole thing that we were talking about way long ago about like gatekeepers, and sometimes in academia and in music and in art, these guys that have like established themselves and kind of been like, well, the only way you can get in is if you do particular things, and then we'll let you in, and it's like, well, how do you get around that and carve yourself a niche in that same field rather than starting something new? And the answer is you do both. It's like sometimes you get lucky and you can get your foot in the door, and other times, if you're determined enough and good enough, you'll form your own thing. It's like he makes that point in the article.
Well, so man, there's so many things about this.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
But I like one stat that I heard that it's not in this article that is apropos and something to think about as we talk about it is that Spotify gets 70,000 new songs a day or something like that.
Holy crap. Wow.
So like, how do you even like, it's so saturated. There's so much stuff. There's so much content that it's like impossible to even keep up. Like you could never keep up. If no one ever put another song out again, you would need, 1,000 lifetimes to actually listen to all the music that's out there. So this is like of recorded music. Like you would need like 1,000 lifetimes to actually listen to it all and never listen to something again. So that's an interesting problem as an artist who's trying to put out music and get people to hear it or whatever.
Yeah, how do you get somebody's attention?
Yeah.
I grabbed my phone to do some math on that. I'm like, okay, 70,000 songs, 70,000 times, let's just say 3 minutes a song. Just to kind of average it down, a little, so that's 210,000 minutes of songs, and then you divide that by 60, and that's 3,500 hours of music is put out a day, right? You said a day.
Something like that,
yeah, there's no way you could keep up. I mean, it's like 100 hours a week. That would be 35 weeks, so that's a little bit over. That's like 7 months.
Well, it's not 100 hours a week, but 200 hours.
110, 120 hours a week, isn't it?
Well, it's 24 hours a day. So 4 days is basically 100. So 5 days, 125, 175 or whatever, 170.
Okay, either way, you're not getting it done for a long time. And that's just one day's new music.
Yeah.
If our averages even pan out. So how do you break through that?
Sure.
And the answer is you don't. To an extent.
That's one huge problem and part of the reason that new music's not listened to is just too much of it. It's so saturated.
Mm-hmm. There's too many options.
But I think he mentions it in the article, just how big of an investment like a lot of the old catalogs are. And I think that's, I was going to mention, and I was one of the things I wanted to type, but I didn't, was like, Well, who's buying those catalogs? Very, very wealthy people. And what do very, very wealthy people have? They have lots of money. And when they buy something, they want to promote it. So they're putting it in commercials and movies and all that stuff. So they're keeping it relevant. So, like, of course, those old catalogs, they have so much backing, like money and finances and all these things that keep it going. So even if people want to listen to new stuff, it's like they're so saturated with hearing the old stuff and like everything because
they also want to make their money back.
Yeah, they want to make their money back.
So they're drop $500 million on a catalog. The last thing you want to do is get into the hole with it. And kudos to Taylor Swift for giving everybody the finger on that, because that's like,
yeah,
it's friggin' brilliant. She's like, oh, you bought the rights to my songs? Like, no. And so she recorded the entire albums again. Yeah, and like nobody's listening to the old ones, and they're all listening to the new ones. So those guys, it's like the GameStop thing, except it's done in music with the artist. And kudos to her for doing that, because I think that's brilliant. Like an absolute FU to that. And I kind of like that idea. It's what I pulled up. I'm in the article now, and it says like song or recording rights sold since 2019. Bob Dylan, Whitney Houston, Beach Boys, Dolly Parton, Neil Young, Shakira, Bad Company, David Coverdale, Bruce Springsteen, David Crosby, Stevie Nicks, David Bowie, Barry Manilow, ZZ Top, Lindsey Buckingham, America, Paul Simon, Tina Turner, Ray Charles, John Legend, James Brown, Taylor Swift, Motley Crue, and Mick Fleetwood. Those are guys, that means their entire catalogs are owned for somebody that's not
somebody else. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I think Sting's in there too. Like, didn't the Police get bought out too?
Not sure.
Or something like, I think they sold his catalog for like $250 million, which, if I'm just going to be performing, $250 million is like, okay.
There's certain numbers where it's like, well, this takes care of my family for generations.
Yes.
Right? At least.
One would hope. Yeah. One would hope, But yeah, those are some big numbers. And so those guys that buy that, they do it in like a group investment. It's like not only is it the record company, but they bring all these investors in to say, hey, we're going to buy these things.
Yeah, it's basically like stockbroker type people that get enough investors. So there's 50 people or whatever, or 500 people that buy these catalogs. Yeah.
Yeah, and they expect to make some money out of it. And I don't necessarily begrudge the idea. I begrudge the whole thing of quelching new music because of it. It's like, yeah, that's great, but screw you for taking away the chance for everybody else to develop new things.
Just made it as another hurdle or whatever.
Yeah, now it's like, okay, unless you sound exactly like Motley Crue, or something like that, they're not going to bother to put you on that particular station because that's what they want. They want their money back, or whatever. It's still like the underlying thing is there's so much old music that's out there that is being continuously replayed, which, the other part of me, because I'm not going to say that I'm going to try to balance this out, but it's just like the way that I think a little bit is like, okay, well, obviously some of this is royally sucks, but the other thing is like, well, some of the older tunes are good and have staying power for a reason originally. Like they were that good and they created that much of a hook. So it's like, why does nobody's bought the right to Bach? Don't buy the right to Bach, you pieces of garbage. Don't get that idea.
I think they've made that impossible for now, at least.
Yeah, at least for now. But either way, like the point being that like those have clear staying power to some degree, and you can argue why they're staying in terms of like why people pick them out, and and so on. And there's a lot to be said with those different academic stuff.
Let's not get into the like German.
Exactly. That line. I was immediately thinking that, which that did happen. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. But at the same time, it's not to say that there wasn't a Bach revival going on behind the scenes, and Nazi Germany just took it to make it look like look at how good Germany is.
It's funny how the top 10 composers, most are German.
Yeah, exactly. At least we're not speaking German. But that also doesn't mean that the stuff that they were writing was necessarily bad either.
Certainly, yeah.
And that's usually my counter on to it. It's like, you're not wrong, but it's a bigger picture than just that. And I think that's also kind of what's going on a little bit with this, is that like, of course they're going to be pushing these particular things, but thank God I haven't heard any remixes of Bad Company or something like that. No offense to Bad Company, but I lived through your original era. I don't want to repeat.
It's going to happen. Don't worry.
Yeah, it'll probably will, but hopefully by then, it'll be blocked from my playlist. Apple's artificial intelligence will be like, yeah, this guy never listens to this. We're not going to suggest it.
Did you see this Don't Look Up? Did you watch that? You hear about
Not
that?
yet. I really want to, but
this doesn't really give much away. But there's like a social media thing in there, right? Like, and it's just imagine like where Facebook could go, and like some rapper or somebody is on the TV, and they're like, these people are watching it, and it's like, my phone just bought one of his songs. It's like, why did my phone just buy? Because it was like you were watching that thing, so it made some connection where it just bought it. So your phone's gonna one day just buy the Bad Company thing because you talked about it today.
God, no, it's gonna show up in my Amazon feed or something like that. It's my Amazon. It's like, why are you suggesting Bad Company?
We've given you this free album.
Yeah. The only Bad Company I really liked was Battlefield Bad Company. That was a great game. So got me through my undergraduate degree. Oh, man. So, yeah. So the article continually says that, like, and this is one of the things that, like, we're missing the cultivation of acts from the record company, where it gets an act that's kind of a little diamond in the rough and spends a couple of albums worth of money to develop them into a super, like,
so what have you done for me lately kind of thing,
Yeah, and nowadays, if you're not showing up with like millions of fans, they don't even bother to look, to an extent. They're like,
the A&R thing or whatever is dead. Mm-hmm. There is no A&R.
No, not at all. It's all a matter of do you have
an Instagram following of 20 million people and but sign this 360 deal where you're probably not make very much money. Yeah.
In terms of the overarching corporate thing, that's a problem. But in terms of the little guy, it also gives, with that much information being available, it kind of gives you a little bit more of a shot. Because if you can start to build a following, it's like you can get in under the radar. And that's one of the things that the article concludes with. He's like, the record companies of previous days never saw rock and roll coming. And all of a sudden Elvis shows up. And, it went from, barbershop quartets and jazz to Elvis taking over everything, and then the Beatles after that, then so it's like these movements can happen under the radar enough to get their attention, because ultimately if they're losing money, they're going to want to jump on something that's making money. It's like that's pretty much it. And there's I remember reading in a book, one of the baseline rules of economics is what you incentivize you get. So if you incentivize like if these newer acts are killing the older ones, like everybody's stopped paying attention to them, and you're incentivizing paying attention to them, they're gonna get that attention of that. It's questions of how do you break through the noise, because like how the heck do you do that? And most of it's following. Like I had a buddy of mine that was in a band years ago that was on the iTunes front page, like not Apple Music. This was well before Apple Music, but iTunes. Yeah. His band was on it for weeks. And he's like, we just, we were doing our thing and touring and playing in bars. Now, that's coming back, thank God. But it's still like over the last 2 years, it's like, how the hell were you going to do that? You weren't. You'd be lucky if you get an internet show, and that started to get old very, very quick. It's like playing a sports game with no audience it's definitely boring. It's still fun to watch, but the energy of a crowd, it's a mutual experience. It's like you get that extra feedback with that. So you can develop a name through consistent touring and feedback from the crowd. It's like you can go and see an incredible musician with a lot of entertainment value, and you're going to remember that if you show up to it. So,
if you actually go,
yeah. But it's one of the interesting stats that he was also talking about was the resurgence of vinyl, which is crazy, because we argued about this before. I just don't get to draw personally, like at all, with digital masters and everything else that you can get. But it's like this now.
Well, it's about the experience. It's about getting this big poster-looking thing.
Exactly.
Like it's a thing. Like
if
you're gonna buy a CD, which is only this big, or a cassette, it's this big, or a record that's this big. Like most people are going to choose the bigger, you know what I mean? It's like the bigger is better sort of thing.
Yeah. That's why we've got dreadnought guitars. What the hell, man? So, anyways, but
you mean Jumbo?
No, I see. Well, Jumbo was just a thing of like we can do bigger. Dreadnought. No, I'm going to add 5 extra strings on top of that. That'll be harp. And then the Thoreau looks at them all and laughs. You haven't seen big yet. So that was a weird tangent. But anyway, so yeah, so you got these LP sales with that, and then you have what else? Like the '80s catalogs, and they're going to want to make their money back. And then you have this whole thing of, have you heard of God? What is it called? There was a name for it. Plunder pop.
No.
This is something one of my students turned me on to last semester, and I was like stealing pop, and he's like, yeah, that's it. Like literally, these guys take sound bites from old films that are out of copyright, and create music from it. So they're not playing anything. It's literally they're just pieces together from everything else. And it was like, okay, like kudos to doing like a mixed media thing, but play a damn instrument. And granted, like after getting acquainted and becoming friends with guys that do a lot of electronic production work, it's like I get the musicality that goes into it now. I'm not necessarily such a classical elitist of being like, you're just pushing a button. It's not that simple. And that kind of knocked me off the high horse of any art form that gets to a degree of following where it's like big. There's something to it that's going on in terms of the work that definitely qualifies it as something artistic. I may not hit play on it. I may skip it. I may never want to hear it again in my life, but it doesn't mean that the guys aren't working hard and there's a lot of nuance to it that I'm just not into. And whatever, that's fine. They can have their thing. I can have my thing, and we're all mostly get along, you know. But in that space of deep fake stuff, and I'm looking at the article right now, and that's why I said the plunder pop, is that you also have like the hologram
like concerts or whatever.
Yeah, performers. That's the word I'm looking for. Too much bourbon. So the hologram performers, you know, like Whitney Houston and Michael Jackson, and getting like this huge nostalgia factor of potentially quote unquote seeing them perform. And that's like, that I have a rough time with. You know, like, don't get me wrong.
Is that different than a classical orchestra?
That I was literally going there. Like, I will pay money to go see Bach in concert any day of the week. But there's a difference between covering it and having it be electronically produced with a video accompaniment. You know, you're at least in that regard. If you're going to an orchestra, they should be playing the instruments. You know, nobody's sitting there with it. Like, but that's the other thing too, is like the singer is maybe performing to a live band, but the singer's recorded. So it's like the opposite of a backing track. You know, you have like the main melody being the thing that's recorded, and everybody else is just backing that up, which is an interesting thing. And it'd be curious to see where they take this holographic level of technology with it, you know, a holodeck type of thing, and whether that's quote unquote legit. And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, it's going to grow. It'll only get more.
It's going to get better. It's going to get more legit. And it's always one generation dying off. Then the next one, it's kind of normalized. And
what was that? Did you see the newer Blade Runner? Was that what that was?
2049?
Yeah.
That one? I haven't seen it yet.
There's a scene where they're like in a Vegas kind of place. Maybe it was Vegas. In there in this building, and like they turn on it's like an old decrepit building, but they turn it on and it's like Vegas. And there's like Frank Sinatra singing, and like, you know, like his holographic things, you know? And I mean, that doesn't seem far-fetched, really.
No, I don't think it seems far-fetched at all, which is both good and bad. You know, it's kind of cool because the nostalgia is just cool. I'm sorry, it's going to be around there for everybody's going to get to a certain point in their lives where are like, hey, I remember playing that on my tape deck, you know, or whatever,
right?
You know, the CD, or I remember when Apple Music was.
I mean, let's face it. If there was a holographic video of Bach playing organ.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
You'd be like, I'm there every weekend.
That's one of the things that stuck out to me with the Dune series, and I know that this seems like a crazy jump, but when in God Emperor of Dune, it was talking about genetic memory and how like Leto had this ability to go through his genetic memory, like could trace his family line or whatever all the way back to like, you know, I don't want to say Adam because he didn't say Adam, but like his first genetic ancestor.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh yeah, like some of his guys had seen Bach perform, and he's like going back and reminiscing about watching Bach perform through his genetic memory. I'm like, That would be cool. How do I do that exactly? Is that possible?
How much meditation?
Yeah. Are there mushrooms involved with this? It's probably, but
you need that Walter guy from Fringe.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, oh, we could do that. I'm pretty sure that's possible.
Yep, there's more than one of everything. So, but yeah, that would have been like that. That definitely would have paid money to lots of money, perhaps a kidney or both. Dialysis works to see that. That would have been really cool. So, anyways,
yeah. So I mean, somebody could feel the same way about Michael Jackson or Prince or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And the article kind of talks a little bit about that with the deep fake stuff, and then it goes into other stuff about like copyright issues and the what's the way to put it, the lawfare type of suing back and forth between musicians, like the whole thing with Katy Perry and the bass line. And I'm like, I watched that whole trial. I didn't watch the whole trial. I read the articles about it.
Yeah.
I looked at the music, and like the guy that they brought up as a star witness should lose his professor position. Like,
oh, sure.
Hands down. He needs to be flogged and kicked out of academia. Because it's like, dude, that gesture, that descending bass line has been around since the frickin' Baroque. Like, or probably before that.
Yeah,
it's nothing new. It's just a typical movement of a 5 to a 1 that happens in all type of cadential type of music, or in that type of cadence. So it's going to be, of course it's going to be there. And it's an eighth note. Really, pick a less common one. It's like, it's just there. And to see the results of that trial was just stunning.
It's easy to lead the witness, right? Because if you're like, well, I'm a musical expert, and if you look at this, I mean, look, listen to this. It sounds kind of similar to this, don't you think? It's like, yep. Yeah, I guess it kind of does.
It's like, really? So you took a left turn, and I took a left turn. So I'm suing you for taking that left turn. Yeah. And then the other guy's like, everybody takes left turns. It happens that common, and that's kind of the same thing that happened with that particular lawsuit in music.
I always wonder, like, how did Katy Perry's lawyers not, like, they must have just not been worried about it, I guess, but they were not prepared to defend themselves. Because they should have easily been able to been like, we thought you might say that.
Yeah.
Like,
here's that bass line here.
But here's 18,000 examples of it.
Exactly.
So, I mean,
that was just jaw dropping to me. I'm like, literally just pull up any pop song in the last 30 years and you're going to find that type of motion there.
Yeah.
It's nothing new, at all. And that guy, I mean, I forget what his name is, which is probably a good thing because I'd be hounding him on the internet. What is your serious problem, dude? Did you enjoy the paycheck that you got from those lawyers?
That's right.
I'm pretty sure you did. And he's like, yes, I did. Yes, I did. And I'm like, well, can't begrudge you that fact.
Was it like a random online institution?
No, he's like some professor, music history somewhere.
No, I mean, at like some random like online, University of Phoenix kind of thing.
Yeah. Yes, I have a degree. You got that out of a claw machine. It happened to work. You got the lucky one.
$17.25. I have the plaque to show you. Yeah.
He justified his expensive degree somehow, if it was an expensive degree. Either way, it's royally got under my skin. But he's like, the article points to that as being, that's kind of put a lot of artists on notice. You're like, oh shit, am I copying something? Am I gonna get sued for putting out this track? Because
right now you have everyone's using the same chord progression, which pretty much have to even like have a hit.
Yep.
And so now it's like, it's so easy. Like, they all sound the same because they are effective the same, because they're like, there's a stylistic expectation and using the same chord progressions. And it's like, they're not giving themselves much variety to choose from. Even though there's practically, so much variety you could do. But
it's the gatekeeper analogy with that. You got guys that are sitting at the top that want to hit because they want the money, and they're looking at it from a business perspective, and they're like, this, what is it? A 1-4-6-5-1. That's the big one right now, and it's they're like, well, this gets it, so do this.
Yeah,
like do a song like this.
Well, and they're saying it's a risk thing, so they're like, well, you could put out this other song Sure, it sounds interesting, but history has shown us through the last 10 years that those songs only become hits 1 out of 1,000,
Hmm.
but like the 14625 whatever,
You're gonna at least break the top 40, and we'll
yeah,
make
like
money.
the you know 30% of those become hits or whatever, so it's like a numbers game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's another factor with it, and it's a what's the way to put it? Multifactorial analysis. It's not just like one thing. There's many certain things that are feeding this, and this factorial culture happens to be part of it. Hi, Mark. So, but
Join us again.
yeah, join us again soon. And we can maybe he has something to say about this as well. But the other that aspect of it, where it's like, it's that tends to be gone against by one queen, like Bohemian Rhapsody being the big thing that blew that to an extent out of the water. That whole argument just because they're like, oh yeah, here's a song that's 6 minutes long, that's operatic and goes everywhere in terms of keys and tempos and time changes.
But I don't
And
think
it's like,
it was a very big hit when it came out.
are you sure? I think
I'm
it was
pretty
big
sure
when it
when
first came out.
when Wayne's World really brought
Wayne's
it back.
World brought it back, but I think, all right,
It's an yeah, I'm not totally sure, but I think I recall hearing that. I don't want to say it flopped, but it wasn't as big of a hit as they expected or something.
what is that top chart? Let's see. Officialcharts.com. Let's take a look here.
We could probably look up like Bohemian Rhapsody, the song, which I'm sure has a Wikipedia thing, and it'd probably tell you it went gold or whatever. Top. Whatever.
It reached number 9 in 1976.
Huh.
So it did pretty good for that type of song in 1976, and then in 1992 with Wayne's World, it hit number 2. So it came back again.
Yeah.
So
and probably a bigger era of music. I mean, in terms of like the '90s were the most profitable era.
Yeah,
of
you were
music
gonna.
Yeah.
It sold 2.62 million copies and was the third biggest selling single of all time.
There you
It's
go.
been streamed.
But-
Here's a number for you. Wait. And it's been streamed over 190 billion times.
Yeah.
What the-
So about $1,200. No, I was kidding.
Yeah, exactly. They got 35 cents sitting in an account for them. Freddie Mercury's bank account is like, oh, sorry, we can't take any more deposits.
Yeah,
that was dark. Sorry, but not sorry. He's gone. But the on a side
What
note,
was that?
I don't know. That was me. That's the bourbon talking now. I shouldn't have had 2 fingers, but it was delicious. So it
Knob Creek.
yeah, Knob Creek. Amen. So the that 190 billion plays, man. Holy cow.
That's just Spotify, right? Was that just Spotify or was that streaming?
It didn't say. It was streams.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think it was just Spotify. But yeah, that's remarkable, man. And so that had the original in the 76 got to number 9 with that type of thing. And then Wayne's World, the movie soundtrack thing, clearly brought it and put it back on the map.
Now, hey, so I sent you, because I happened to see this recently too, and it was that 12-Tone Music YouTube channel. And it was like, Rick Beato was wrong. Old music isn't better thing. Did you watch that?
I didn't watch that video yet.
Okay,
you're wrong.
This is a really interesting thing that he brings up. If you haven't seen that channel, it's the channel where the guy like writes on a notepad the whole time when he's like drawing pictures while he's talking. They're usually really well done, and it's kind of like a Rick Beato kind of thing in the sense that it's like a musicologist sort of person, whatever. Anyway, he was complaining because Rick had basically said, like, look, like Bohemian Rhapsody, for instance, like how much complexity is in that song or whatever. And if you compare that to Justin Bieber, like there's no comparison, or whatever. And the 12-Tone person was like, well, that's like, you can't cherry pick it. That's the problem with that. And I can't remember what the name of it was, but there's a bias we get. But so basically though, like, we have the luxury now of going back and being like, well, what songs were great from the 70s, you know? And it wasn't probably the songs that were popular. And so one of the things he points out is like, and so in 1991, right, all this stuff happened, right? It's a big musical year, you know, like Smells Like Teen Spirit comes out,
Nirvana, Pearl
the
Jam.
Black Album comes out, the Pearl Jam
Metallica.
stuff, like Blood Sugar Sex Magic comes out. Like there's all these like iconic albums that we think are great now. Like they stack up to the best albums of all time. It's a really great year. He's like, what do you think the number one song was in 1991? And you're like, well, was it like Smells Like Teen Spirit or like what? You know, like you're thinking like that, right? And he's like, it was Bryan Adams, that song from the Robin Hood movie or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, look into
Everything
your
I Do.
eyes. Yeah, everything I do, I do for you or whatever. Like that's the biggest song. That was like what you.
God, I remember hearing that everywhere. Holy crap.
Yeah, and it's like, but nobody knows that song now. Like somebody who was born in 1991 does not know that song.
Mm-hmm.
And but they probably know Smells Like Teen Spirit and, you know, Jeremy and all these kind of like, or Under the Bridge and whatever, you know, like whatever. There's all these great, or Enter Sandman. So many like, you know, like songs we all remember now, and they're still iconic. So basically, it's like, well, that's what we're doing now. If you say, well, Justin Bieber, we don't know what the biggest song from 2022 or 2021 is going to be. We're not, we don't, in about 30 years, we might be able to be like, man, remember that song in 2022 was so good. We don't have any way of reflecting on that now. We can't, because as big as we think that like Nirvana and those things were, in a sense, they really weren't the biggest things out at the time.
Nirvana was pretty damn popular. I mean,
certainly, but they weren't like top 10 like biggest songs of the year popular. So like there was like Whitney Houston songs and whatever.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Whitney Houston, Bad Company, NSYNC, maybe NSYNC, were they alive?
But even
then?
like that Cherry Pie, I think that came out in like 90 or 91.
Warrant was still
like
around 91. Wow.
I think that was all happening. There was like a weird transition. So there's all these like songs that would have been like huge at the time, like on pop-ish radio, and it wasn't Enter Sandman and, you know, Smells Like Teen Spirit and stuff like that. We remember them as the biggest things, and they really are in hindsight, and still selling ridiculous amounts of records, right?
Mm-hmm.
But same deal like throughout history. So if you would go back to when Bohemian Rhapsody came out, not likely it was a top, you know, whatever the number one song was, you'd probably be like, you probably won't even remember it. You probably don't even know what it is. You know.
All right, now I got to find out. Let's see. It was 1976.
Interesting.
Nope.
Yeah, and what month was the 9? You know, like.
Holy cow! Really? Wow. Okay, so I haven't heard of 3 of the 4 top songs. The first one is "Silly Love Songs" by Wings.
So like Paul McCartney Wings?
I don't know. I have no idea. It doesn't say. And then "Don't Go Breaking My Heart" by Elton John. I know that one. "Disco Lady" by Johnny Taylor. And then "Oh What a Night." That I've heard, but that's probably because of all the weddings. Let's see.
Yeah, anyway, so it's interesting, right? So like songs that were huge maybe weren't the best songs. You know, the memorable ones.
Bohemian Rhapsody was 18 at the end of the year.
Yeah.
18th. The other ones above it were 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. Heard that one?
I don't think I know that. Yeah.
By Paul Simon. Take a Plane, Wayne.
Can't think of it.
Oh,
but I probably maybe know it if I heard it.
Yeah, A Fifth of Beethoven. Nice. Sarah Smile by Hall & Oates. Afternoon Delight. That's probably from Anchorman is where I know that more than anything. I Write the Songs by Silver Connection, Love Hangover, Get Closer, More, Bohemian Rhapsody, Misty Blue, Blue River, I'd Really Like to See You Tonight, 1976. That's wow.
Yeah, so none of those songs are probably as iconic as Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah, I think the only one that I could be close was be "Don't Go Breaking My Heart," and that's clearly subjective because I just remember that.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, even like certainly Afternoon Delight or something sticks around.
Yeah.
But yeah, part of that's the cultural influx in a new movie, which is part of the reason you and I would have never heard Bohemian Rhapsody, or not really in the same context without Wayne's World.
Yeah, let's see. That was 1992.
We like that became like a thing for us. It's part of our.
Oh, wow. It wasn't the
Yes. What are the number one songs in '92? So imagine now. This is a year.
Here we go. "End of the Road" by Boys to Men.
All right.
"Baby Got Back." That we know. "Jump" by Criss Cross. "Save the Best for Last" by Vanessa Williams.
Don't even remember
"Baby
that.
Baby Baby" by TLC. "Tears in Heaven" by Eric Clapton. But that's also a cover of his original one back in the like 68, 69 when the original Layla.
Yeah, that was played a lot though for sure.
Or wait, I'm wrong. That's not a cover. That was an original one that he wrote. That song is like he wrote that after. Yeah, he wrote that
now
after.
We're getting sued. Yeah,
he wrote that after his 4-year-old son died. That's like, damn, man. And as a parent, you're like, that song has a lot more weight to it now. So,
but there's nobody under the age of 30 that knows that song.
No, "My Lovin' You're Never Gonna Get It" by En Vogue. "Under the Bridge" by Red Hot Chili Peppers. That one everybody knows. "All for Love" by Color Me Bad. "Just Another Day." Holy shit, this is taking me back to VH1 back at the time. You know, "I Love Your Smile" by Shanice. "To Be With You," Mr. Big. I remember learning to play that song on guitar.
Sure.
I'm Too Sexy by Right Said Fred. "Black or White"
that stuck around just probably.
Yeah, just because of the silliness of the song.
Yeah.
"Achy Breaky Heart" by Billy Ray Cyrus. That's 15. And then "November Rain" by Guns N' Roses. "Life is a Highway."
Was that the first rock song?
"November Rain"?
Yeah.
No.
I don't know if I guess, I mean, you
November
had like
Rain was on like Use Your Illusion 2.
No. That was the first rock song on the list, is what I'm saying.
Oh,
like, I don't know, the "Tears in Heaven" and more.
no, I wouldn't call that rock.
And the same with More Than Words or whatever.
"To Be With You." Yeah,
To Be With You. Sorry, yeah.
More of an acoustic track.
Same deal. It's like
Black or White by Michael Jackson was pretty rocky.
Yeah, I guess it did have Van Halen in it, didn't it? Or
No,
it's Slash.
Nope, he actually just performed it with him. The actual guy that did it was the producer, came up with that opening lick, that he came up with that lick, and then Tim Pierce, the YouTube guy, did that middle section where he's like, Dr. Feelgood was really cool at that time, so he wanted something like Dr. Feelgood, so he came up with that particular part. You know, it was two guitar players. And
I wouldn't call that a rock song, though. I mean, it's still not, really. It's a pop song with guitars in it, for sure. But but I mean, like, the first rock band, like, rock song was the Guns N' Roses one. And even that's like a ballad, really.
Now, what about Under the Bridge Downtown?
Okay. Oh, yeah, I'll give you that. That's true.
That's at number 9, and the November Rain is 17. So...
But it's not Nirvana. It's not Metallica. It's not Alice in Chains or Soundgarden. Or Rage Against the Machine. It's none of that stuff, right? It's like...
Metallica is not on there.
Yeah, because they probably didn't consider the Black Album as part of that year.
What was it? It was Nirvana?
They probably didn't have one out either.
No. Smells Like Teen Spirit is on as number 32.
Oh, so it stayed on the list.
Yeah. And then, what was the other band? Was
Pearl
Rage
Jam, like Pearl Jam on there? Rage might have not been out by then. Not sure.
Yeah, Rage, no Pearl Jam.
Soundgarden? Alice in Chains? Trying to think of the most like iconic.
Soundgarden. No Alice in Chains.
Yes, I mean, you're talking about, these are the biggest bands of that era. It's particularly those first like 5 years of the 90s or whatever, starting in 91.
Yeah, Def Leppard is on there.
But yeah, like Def Leppard.
And Michael Bolton. Oh God.
But like
What's
Vanessa
it? Change my
Williams
name.
and stuff, right? Like
Vanessa Williams.
so many of those
U2.
things are not they don't have much staying power in a lot of ways.
U2's on there. Toad the Wet Sprocket. Luther Vandross.
Okay, since we're already doing this, what about 91? So that 91 was the iconic year of some of the, biggest albums that have ever been released.
All right, let's see here. We got it's Bryan Adams, number 1. Number 2 is "I Want to Sex You Up" by Coloring Bad. "Gonna Make You Sweat, Everybody Dance Now" by CNC Music Factory. Oh God, this. Ugh. "Rush Rush" by Paula Abdul. "One More Try" by Timmy T. "Unbelievable" by EMF.
See, none of these are like the iconic songs.
More Than Words. More Than Words is number 7. "I Like the Way" by High Five. I don't even remember that. Probably.
So again, this is when grunge started. This is when Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, the Black Album.
I'm trying to see where any of those guys come in. Oh God, and that just makes you kind of cry. Holy cow!
Yeah,
Scorpions is the first rock band on there that I would consider rock. Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, you got "Losing My Religion," but that's like not rock. "Winds of Change," number 39.
Yeah, already at 39.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we don't. So this is where that bias comes from. So if like, that's what the 12-tone people or person was saying, was like, Rick Beato would be like, man, remember 91? It was the greatest. Like, listen to these Nirvana songs and this Soundgarden song and this. But it's like, well, those weren't the biggest songs of the day. They just weren't.
Yeah, they're not even on here, man.
Yeah.
Like Nirvana doesn't even show up. No Red Hot Chili Peppers. No Alice in Chains. None of the rock bands show up at all.
Yeah.
Or any of the albums that we would consider
like the greatest albums of all time. Yeah. So the ones we would pick.
When did Black come out?
The Black Album came in 91, I think.
Sure.
Pretty sure.
Now we have the internet.
Yeah, what does it say?
August 12th, 91. Wow.
There you go. Yeah. So, I mean, how big does that album seem?
And they weren't even on number 2. Like in 19, didn't we do 92?
Yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't even show up on that either. Wow. That's
so we have I can't remember it was a certain bias, but it's like a
I know it's
reflective bias. He says it like right at the beginning of the
I get it's nostalgia bias.
Yeah,
basically
something like that. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, it's pretty interesting. So anyway, that's why it's really like not genuine. And this is what they were saying, to say like, well, the new music isn't as good. It was like, well, we don't even know. Like, there's probably some songs that came out this year that like will rise to the top. That will be like, man,
Spiritual Agenda.
2022 was the greatest year ever of music. Because, St. Vincent put out a thing and you're like, man, that St. Vincent song was killing.
It didn't even pop on the charts. And that's the other thing. It's like, how do they even do charting now? Because like the radio I don't even know how radio is still alive, personally.
Yeah, and I wonder if they do, if it's radio that is still.
That was the Billboard charts. I think it still is, but that's also a sign of a dying industry.
Yeah, it doesn't. Well, they probably get the streaming numbers too. So then, but it's like, how do you compare the numbers? I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't, like, in one sense, I would almost say that radio is not relevant to picking the actual numbers, because radio it just happens to be playing. Streaming, you go, I want to listen to the song, generally speaking, unless you go to like the top 100 and hit play type of thing, which is something that Beato does.
Did we talk about do you ever see that Black Keys thing? There was an interview with them. They had an album come out, maybe was it last year or the year before? And basically they were talking about how it's all like screwed up, like the way that they do the numbers. So Black Keys are big enough where if they put an album out, it could be the number 1 album,
Mm-hmm.
But the way that they do that, the way that the record companies are doing that is they're like, well, why don't you do this? So we want you to, when you sell a ticket to a concert, you give them an
Yeah, give
album.
away an album.
Right. And they were like, well, why would we do that? And they're like, will we get more money for it? No, it'll cost you money. Wait, so we should give, we're going to give the albums away. Well, like, yeah, but then you'll have the number one album because there's going to be all this like pre-sale tickets thing. They can sell at Madison Square Garden. So it's like, yeah, you're going to have like 1 million albums sold in the first day because all those pre-purchases of the tickets or whatever. And they're kind of like, but like, and they're like, yeah, well, how much does that, are we going to make money from that? No, it'll cost you $3 or whatever per album that you put out. You know, it's like, wait, so we're going to lose
excuse me,
$3 million or whatever, like, so we can have the number one album. But anyway, they also mentioned something. They're like, about the streaming numbers. They're like, don't you want to get your streaming numbers up? And they're like, yeah, he's like, when I was a kid, this is what the guy said. He's like, when I was a kid, I had that Bart Simpson album that came out. He's like, I listened to that thing 8 billion times. Like, I just kept listening to it over and over. He's like, these streaming numbers, like when people are listening to like Taylor Swift or whatever, it's like kids just listen to the same song like 18,000 times in a row.
Oh,
That's
God.
not because it's like the number one song or whatever. Like, is that a good evaluation of what the like biggest song is? Because that's what kids do. Like, they pick a song and they just listen to it 8 billion times.
In that regard, The Very Hungry Caterpillar is my favorite book. Reading it to my kids a bazillion times.
So they're like, I think our fans love our, like they love our stuff, but they probably also like listening to other groups too. Like, so we're not going to try to be like like the number one streaming. Like it's sort of like, we can't even be that. Like we're not appealing to like 3-year-olds or whatever. They're going to like put it like this. Like, that's not our audience, And anyway, it was just really fascinating from their perspective. They were just kind of like, it's all so gamed to be like the number one hit or whatever. And
yeah, well, and that's like, it's
disingenuous.
Yes, absolutely. But the bigger question is, how do you judge that in a situation like we're in now? Is it album sales? Because who buys an album now? I can't remember the last
but if
time.
you buy a ticket to a concert, you get an album.
Exactly. But who's buying tickets to concerts now? It's like, it's kind of sketchy to an extent. Though I think I'm feeling more comfortable about maybe going to a concert sometime soon. But regardless, the metric needs to be unified, and almost in one sense, and I'm not a huge football fan, but like, it's what everything that's just happened with the overtime situations. It's like, well, wait a minute, a coin flip is basically deciding who's going to win. It's the first person that scores. What the hell is that?
Yeah, right.
This isn't a death match where if you get the killing blow, you just walk away.
Right.
Or whatever. It's like this is a contest, so it should expand, especially when you get higher up and it gets more important. So in one sense, I think like the metrics need to be completely redone to a point where the field is level. With that, because it's like, if it's just like streaming. It's like that one band, I can't remember their name, that wanted to fund a new album, so they told their fan base, we have this album, it's literally nothing. Like, it's just silence. Go on Spotify and play it all night while you sleep on repeat. And they made like $50,000 or something like that.
So they took it off. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they took it off, and it's like, well, I'm sorry, you made the system that way, and they played by your rules. It's like, there you go. Whatever system gets into place, it's inevitable that somebody's going to game it at some way. There's too many people with too much potential time just seeing if they can do it, and it's going to be it's like, why does this get cracked? Because it could be done, and there's some guy sitting there in the basement like, what if I could do that? And then it happens.
I mean, I think, well, like, so okay, if the average song is 3 minutes, that means you can play it 20 times an hour, and at 24 hours, that's whatever.
480
times. So like, if you have enough accounts that just do that for a song, right, you could get tens of thousands of plays in a day, or what I mean, every day. For people just repeating a song or whatever. And I'm sure that happens. We talked about that with the spectacle culture stuff too, right? It's like sometimes you think, well, would I pay for like views and would I pay for likes on a YouTube video? But it's like, is McDonald's doing that? Yeah. Is Coke doing that? Is Katy Perry doing that? Yeah, probably. Like they're
And in one sense, it's like
because they have to. Like they have to.
yeah, they have to, and it keeps the brand up, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
Why is this popular? Because it's popular.
Right.
Well, why is it popular? Because it's popular. Why are you giving the plants Brando? Because it's what plants need. Electrolytes. Well, what about water? But and that's part of the underlying issue with that all is that eventually, like Mark was saying, it's like the spectacle culture feeds itself, and there's no way to avoid it. And I'm curious to see how far this goes back, because I don't necessarily think it's a new thing to occur. I just think it's
what's that?
Easier spectacle culture.
Like, I think it always probably existed, right?
Yeah, I mean, like there's a reason why Rome spent so much to build the Colosseums to the extent that they did, because people just like to watch the spectacle. That's just part of it.
Right.
And that's at least 2,000 years old. How much further back does that go in the human condition? There's music has obviously been a part of cultural substance from as far back as we can remember. So does that mean that it's immediately spectacle? Does the spectacle happen out of people just happen to be entertained and it grows from there? And I think the answer to all those questions is yes, but it's not like it's not a mutual exclusivity in that regard. It tends to be like the whole idea. Well, I don't know. It tends to be the whole idea of mythos and how a certain people can build onto a particular myth just from constant repetition and exposure to it. It becomes its own thing. It's like it's the question of like, is Santa Claus real? And it's like, does a guy fly around? If you look at it as the question as does a guy fly around to giving presents to kids every night on Christmas? If you have kids, please turn them away at this moment. The answer is no. I had to get the spoiler out there. But the idea of like, if somebody goes around wearing a Santa Claus costume and murdering people, people would say that's not Santa. Because there is an idea of what Santa should be.
Yeah.
The reality of it is different. So the question that I'm bringing it up to mainly push on the whole idea of that's dark, but maybe it's bourbon. Maybe I'm bitter at Santa Claus. The Santa Claus. Ching! It's but going off of that, it's like it's maybe the aspect of the music sales and the spectacle culture or something that's alive because the collective mythos has pushed it to a point of actually giving it that type of life. And I'm clearly talking later in the bourbon pour on that one, but that's there. So how does that actually affect the record company in the sense of allowing new music to come out? Like the stuff that comes out and breaks the mold, is that a new part of the spectacle? Well, I mean, no, it can't be a new part of the spectacle culture. It's just another aspect of it.
So one of the things that 12 Tone article brought up is, so Rick was like, record companies aren't promoting new groups and blah, 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 and they're not finding new talent. But the 12 Tone thing, they also mentioned, well, like a lot of the bigger bands that have come out have been not even using record labels anymore. Like that Little Nas X, they do have a record label now, but that Old Town Road or whatever that song is.
Old Town Road? Yeah.
Yeah, like that was out on Bandcamp first, just as a self-release. But it became a thing. And then
did it become a thing after Billy Ray did that whole like
I don't know, but
joint thing, or was it?
I'm not sure, but and then even like he mentioned like St. Vincent.
But
he mentioned these are people like that. There's a lot of like groups that never use the traditional like record company that have become like pretty big artists.
But then you get the counterpoint of a little, and I'm going to push a little bit back on that. Is like you got Post Malone that allegedly started from Bandcamp, but that's the reverse. That was an AstroTurf thing, at least if I'm remembering the article right, versus a Bandcamp thing. It's like he was already signed and ready to go, but they wanted to make it seem like it was a grassroots thing, so they built the Bandcamp.
So I don't think that, and the ones that he gave examples for, or even like the Billie Eilish stuff, she was putting out stuff before she had her deal.
Okay.
But it was big enough, like she was getting enough movement that they were like, we'll probably sign you, but you need like 5 more songs kind of thing. And they were actually like, there's actually like a video. My kids liked her in particular, so we watched. It's on you.
There's like
Disney or
the
Apple
documentary
TV or
thing.
something
Yeah.
like And like her and her brother are like writing these songs, and like they still don't really have a record deal yet, but they obviously have some fan base, I guess. Anyway, like, and then the 12 Ton person was like, by doing that, actually, all of those artists, maybe not Lil Nas X or whatever, but like Billie Eilish and like Saint Vincent were 2 that I remember anyway. Like they can do anything they want. Like as artists, they're not. The expectation from their fans is that they're gonna do something that's a little bit off kilter. Like they're not expecting them to just follow the mold, because neither of those groups do. Like they don't just fit in some like mold or whatever. Like they're kind of messed up and weird, and and it's cool. Like actually, I mean, if you haven't listened to Saint Vincent, she's awesome. She's totally awesome. Anyway, it's like they were just saying that still exists. So there's still an avenue to do that. Now there's a lot of hand waving in there, like how that actually happened and how'd they get to be that big or whatever happened, that something helped them grow that. It didn't just happen. But anyway, it's interesting. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I think it was like that Bad Guy song came out or whatever, and like Billy's still living like with her parents and like in that video, and like they didn't have that much money. Like they basically were kind of poor. But like the record producer or somebody, like, or not the record, I don't know, like she did a video, and then for her birthday, for like her 17th birthday or something, they bought her this charger, but it was just like the V6 version of it. Like it wasn't like the fully decked out like that, but that was like her dream car. Like that's what she really wanted. And they're like, we didn't tell her it was the 6-cylinder one, that's how they were, because she's only 17. But,
you know what? I give them a Hemi. Sorry.
So, but anyway, it's like, well, even as her songs are like huge, like she's not even like, they were already taking off. She didn't have a record deal, and like she didn't have any money. But anyway, it's just kind of interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that exactly. No, except that there is other avenues for like
exactly.
growing,
that was your point.
It's not, you don't need the record. The record companies have failed us on the new music front, but that's not necessarily a problem anymore.
Yeah, I don't think that's like, and that's like the good thing with that is, the one thing is like, if you tell people where do they listen to music, Bandcamp is gonna basically a non-existent to most lay listeners.
Yeah.
If you're a musician, I think that
it's a bad name. Did I ever tell you that? I think people are like Bandcamp? American Pie and Bandcamp and like all these kind of things. They're just like, I don't think that's a good thing. Like, are you telling me to go? What link is this? Like, I don't. Is this safe? Does this work safe?
Well, it's like that. Wasn't there a commercial during the football games? Everybody on my fantasy football thread was blowing up about a couch called the Love Sack, which is like, did you hear what you just said? Like, are you getting? No? Okay. Okay. You do you on that one, but
yeah, sure.
I think the person that came up with the name needs to be a little bit more worldly wise on that one.
Like they could have had almost any other name except Bandcamp, and I think it would have actually fared out better. But regardless.
Well, yeah, I mean, I like that service. So, I mean, I bought your album off of that. It's like, and I bought.
I have a love-hate relationship with it, because particularly that Red Side Visible record, it's been streamed like 1,000 times on there for people that never bought it, and I make 0 cents on it.
Yeah,
it's like, well, come on. I mean, like, that kind of stinks,
Yeah.
And it's only if people buy it. And then you could say, well, they have ways where you can be like, well, you can only listen to 3 tracks and then you have to buy it. But like, that's not a very good way to like do it either because people are like, well, I'm not gonna listen then.
Yeah,
It's
and
like,
that's the question with that is like, how do you promote it at a point where the streams can also be a source of revenue and the album buying?
right,
How do you get? It's like upselling to an extent.
right.
You
Well,
know,
I saw a thing. It's funny. We could go on forever, I guess, but I'll have to send you another article. Maybe we'll talk about it next time. This person, Rachel, something. She's a music person. She commented on all this stuff and the Spotify streaming and this the whole thing with Neil Young and everything that we didn't even get into.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But she was like, basically, music has no value now, right? Like you can't make money selling it. No one buys it. You can't make money streaming it. Like you really just can't. So not really anyway. So all the music is something to help people buy your other stuff. So
Yeah,
the music is used to promote your merchandise, promote or something else. Maybe it's your teaching services or your videos or your,
I mean, that's the thing that is remarkable now is the teaching services. It's like,
So, but you're using you're using that CD or album, or I guess you're using that streaming to promote that thing. That's what it's for. It's not. It has no value on its own. That's basically was her premise.
Mm-hmm. I can see that, and that makes sense in the sense of branding. Yeah. It's like you're building. You're not just a musician. You're building a business base, and now you have to do everything.
Right.
That's the counter thing with that, which is a royal pain in the butt because as much as we're on social media with this podcast and everything else, I hate spending my time on it. It's like I think I just commented on something Facebook today, and that's the first time I think I've commented in months.
No snap.
Yeah, it's like, and all I commented was like, it was something about a book. I'm like,
you're a
just
moron.
No, it wasn't that. It was more of a just finish the book type of thing. Because, the other thing that I commented on was like a Sweetwater contest. I'm like, I always go for sweet gear, type of thing. But that's it. Otherwise, it's like I'm not present, and I don't want to take the time to do it necessarily because it's. I'd rather be practicing, or working on my own stuff, and to have to do the self-promotion thing. In that, I don't mind self-promoting at concerts. It's like I've done that thing. I've schlepped just like everybody else in that regard, and you have to. That's just part of it. You go to a concert, you play your show, you hang around with your merch afterwards, hoping to sell something. You can get gas to get to the next show, crash on somebody's couch or whatever. That's just part of the gig with that. But like in the social media age, it's really annoying. It's like I don't want to be pestered to get something. It's like I'll buy it eventually, and especially to an extent, I always support my friends in the music community in the sense of other musicians that I know that come out with albums. Sure. And I generally do enjoy the music. It's not like that album sucks and I'm just buying it to be nice type of thing. It's like, no, I like it. If I'm going to spend money on something, I'm going to like it. I'm not just going to buy it just to buy its sake. Yeah. So it's interesting the amount of hats that you have to put on in that regard. And that's the other thing that I don't think this article at The Atlantic points out is in terms of making it today in one way versus making it, 20 years ago, pre-internet or pre-Napster internet type of thing. It's like, then if you were touring and really like Dave Matthews made it. Well, I mean, they're obviously obnoxiously talented, but excuse me, he performed like crazy and told everybody just to tape it. Like there's countless bootlegs of Dave Matthews shows before he made it big and after he did afterwards. But that's what got him the groundwork spinning with.
They also, they improvise, so it's always different.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But that's kind of like that level of interaction is, I don't want to say it's missing today, but there's something that's just, you don't get to grow that same way anymore.
Certainly, it's certainly trickier. Just playing live is trickier.
Yeah, well, it's
regardless of the COVID stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I'm talking pre-COVID stuff. Yeah. But and now after that, it's like, good Lord, am I gonna have a show? Like I'll book it, but it might be streamed online, but God only knows, And that's tremendously disappointing. But we'll make it through it like every other pandemic that humanity has had. But the underlying aspect of how to make it, quote unquote. And the other question is like, what's make it? What do you mean by make it? Is it millions? Is it $100,000 a year? Like, where are you comfortable? It's like the lead singer of Tesseract was like, I made more money as a beat cop in London than I do as a touring artist, musician. But the question is like, did they build their own home studio? Because that's an easy couple $100,000 of profits sucked into that. But then you don't have to worry about renting somebody else's studio. And nowadays, everybody's got a studio. So we're all throwing money into gear that way. There's the idea of like, what are you like in terms of music? Like, I think a good year for me is 20K. Like that if I'm going to be totally honest with everything. And it's like, I'm happy. And I luckily live in an area where that can be sustainable. Yeah. And do I want to grow it? Hell yeah, I want to grow that, but don't get me wrong. My goal isn't to be a billionaire making music. I just want to play, I just want to perform. I want to do it constantly. That's it. I don't plan on ever retiring. I like it too much. And I think that when you see that in every other serious musician. It's like, when are you going to stop? When I'm dead?
Yeah, right. You can't.
You can't stop. There's something about it. That if you're not into it to that level, you just don't get it, and you really don't. It's like talking to somebody that doesn't have kids. It's like, if you don't have kids, you just don't know. And they can go blah blah blah, but just like everybody else, for 4 kids, like da, 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 and then they show up, and you're like, never mind. I had no clue, none. That was totally like zip. That is a line that you don't know till you cross over it. That's it. And that's like, and it's like getting married or whatever, some of the big things where you think that it's not that different, and then you cross it and it's like, nope, this is totally different. Everything is shifted. So like with myself in terms of the music making thing, it's like, I just want to continually do this. I want to be able to support my family to an extent. I'd love to be able to take over my wife's income in terms of total things. And I'm happy doing that. Like I don't, I'm very, very low maintenance personally, like it almost to a fault. It kind of annoys Julie where my standards are. It's like, it's working. Why fix it? She's like, because it's falling apart. But I'm like, but it's doing its main job. No. All right. And she's she's right. And she's got a point to that. If that was music equipment, I'd be like, no, we need to fix that right away. So, it's clearly my own bias lenses on that.
Certainly.
So I guess where I'm going with that is like, my epitome of success would be making enough to completely cover my entire household expenses and my kids to be financially secure. Not rich, but just secure.
Right, yeah. No,
I'm happy with doing that.
I think that's probably true for most, yeah.
Yeah, I think
unfortunately, I think that a lot of times to get to that level, you end up being at a fame. Well, people that are a certain fame, you're thinking like, man, they're on the cover of this magazine and they're doing this and that, and you're thinking, oh, they're a cover of Guitar Magazine, they must be doing well. And then you're like, well, they make $5,000 more than you a year.
Yeah, like, exactly. Yep.
You're like, but they're touring all over the world, and like you said, like with the Tesseract guy or whatever, it's like,
yeah. A stage show isn't cheap. You might pay $100 a ticket, but it's costing them like $35,000.
Right, they have a bus, and how much does the bus cost to just go to the next city?
Yep. Yeah, and the crew and the sound setup, all the equipment. If they have a stage show, dancers, food for the dancers. It's like, yes, they make money. But their margins are as thin as everybody else's, which is whatever you see. It's like, well, they made gross, $200 million. The profit is 1%. It's like, if that's it. Yes, that's a lot.
Well,
and
even
money.
Like a band like, let's say Tesseract, which I think probably has like 6 people in it. It's like they don't, whatever profit the band gets, they're probably not just splitting evenly. There's probably like, well, we should put 30% in a savings account for the band, like, and then we'll split the rest, right? So it's a business. We got to keep money in the band or whatever. Maybe it's even 50%. Like, well, 50%
like
of
the
what
whole
we
thing
made.
with Macedon. We were reading that article and talking about the guy from Macedon. It's like he's got a lot of investment properties. Like, and he mows lawns, when he's not touring. Why?
Right.
Because I need to eat.
Yeah. You even hear Dave Mustaine from Megadeth. It's like, I can't afford my house if I don't go on tour. You know, like I'm not like, even though you're thinking like, well, you have platinum albums and stuff, like you
Yep.
should be. It's like, well, the only time I
I
make
mean,
money is if I tour.
yes, exactly. And part of that is like the old, I've just made $1 million. Spend, just press them, which I don't begrudge anybody. It's like you finally made it in that. And, it's like Shaquille O'Neal was saying, like when he got his first like $1 million check, he was like, car, car for you, house, da 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 da. And then finally, one of his friends who was a financial advisor called him up. He's like, let's have a meeting. And just slapped him across the face and said, this is not how you do this and going to be successful from here on out. And he was lucky enough to have a guy like that. Other guys are just like blowing through it and whatever, like Johnny Depp, $30,000 a month on wine. Dude, you might want to tone down that habit. just a little bit, and so, or whatever, but they can do whatever the hell they want with their own things. I don't care, but maybe I'm unsympathetic when they run out to an extent. It's like, well, but you're at worth it. And like that money that you make afterwards, you just tend to sew it right back into what you love to do. That's it. That's the bottom line. So the Atlantic article had a lot of great points with things, and it all ends up being like money being the underlying thing with that. And they certainly should have pushed, my gripes about it would be like, well, why don't you point people in the directions where they can listen to new music exclusively? Like there's not a one, I got the article. Let's see. Bandcamp. Not one mention of Bandcamp in the entire article. And you're going to bitch about new music, but you don't give any things of like, this is where it's at. Why don't you try searching X out, in terms of a streaming service and so on. I get these points, and I'm not begrudging that, but it's more like, well, if you're going to complain about a problem, at least have some starting point so anybody can just take a step.
I don't know if he was, well, I guess he kind of was complaining, but
no, he like listed every single one of the big companies. He said that he clearly works in the music industry to some extent, where like as an A&R or promoter, because he says that he gets inundated with stuff for new promotion from guys, and he's just like, it's usually thanks trash. I'm briefly summarizing, but that's if you live in that industry, you're going to be getting thousands of those a day. You just don't have the time. Even if you work 8 hours a day and you hit play the entire time, it gets old. And it's I understand it when musicians like get sick of getting everybody's demo, because listen, they're human. We're all human. Eventually we have our limits where it's like, I just can't keep doing that. I got my own thing to worry about. My time is so stretched. Investing in that time into listening to that is something where I can go and do my own thing. And I want to get my own thing done. So that's going to fall by the wayside.
Yeah. And I think it's, especially if they're getting 10 CDs or albums or whatever every day. Like, even if they want to, it's like, I'm never going to get to this.
Mm-hmm. And that's just whatever. Everybody ends up hitting the limit, and that's that. So in terms of that article, I think it raises some great points. But I would also say it's missing one big warning of get ready to hear a crap ton of Bob Dylan covers as they try to recoup their losses from the rights. And every other band that's on there, it's like you're going to hear that all over the place. Probably put into movies because they know somebody in the movie industry for soundtrack stuff, scratching each other's palms and so on. But that's just the way things work. That's just it. It's like sometimes it's who you know.
Certainly.
And I know Crackle. Sorry, Mitch Hedberg joke. How did you get on the cover of Snack Crackle or Rice Krispies? Like, you got to know somebody, and I know Crackle. So Snack Crackle Cop. Mitch.
I told you to listen to, and I don't know if you did, but that Vernon Reid interview.
Oh, I didn't have a chance to listen to it yet.
Yeah, again, so it's kind of interesting.
I don't have so much time.
Vernon Reid was on Greg Koch's podcast, and it was kind of funny because Greg can talk a lot, but then like Vernon kind of was like preaching. So like Vernon talks like the whole time. But and I only listened to the first half of it. But they were talking about Greg was kind of mentioning like, man, I saw Living Color recently, and like you guys were just killing it. Like you've been doing this for like 35 years, and you guys sound awesome. That band's been around forever. He's like, you know, I don't want to say anything negative, but like a lot of your contemporaries, like I go to see them and like it was cool, but like they're obviously playing to backing tracks and they're doing all this stuff. And so Vernon gets into like, he's like, well, so there's two different things. There's like safe music and there's like unsafe music. And some musicians are making safe music that doesn't challenge you or whatever, but it just makes you kind of feel good. It's like if it's a love story, for instance, in the song, like everything works out, like isn't she perfect and everything's perfect, like, or you know, or it could just be like the music itself is like those bands that are doing that effectively is what he's saying is the ones that are doing the backing tracks. People go to those shows because it's not because they want to be like challenged or whatever, like they want to go there for nostalgia. They want to go in the safe place where it feels good, and that their expectation is it's just going to sound like the record and like whatever.
Yep.
And he's like, well, some groups aren't. That's not their purpose. So it's not. It wasn't one was better than the other or whatever. But that some people were there doing the nostalgia thing or whatever. And I guess in a lot of ways you could say that's most classical musicians too, for that matter. But then there's ones that are going to like challenge you, like where like you hear the song or something and it makes you like question whether you should like leave your marriage and like, you know, like drop out of college, and like that's the intent. And like, so Living Color, for instance, like they have a very strong like political agenda and stuff. So for them, it doesn't make sense because to like play to backing tracks, for instance, because their thing is about like striking you. Like you should go there and be like, be shook. Like that's part of the experience. But it made me start thinking about like, my sister and I were talking about, she's by degree, she's a sociologist too. So, like Mark in that respect. But she said there's all kinds of like psychology on people who like watch the same shows, and like even we were talking about the NFL, and I'm like, I'm just so tired. I don't like enjoy it because it feels like it's the same thing over and over. It's just like repeat. To me, that's how it feels. It's kind of like somebody watching like 70 million shows of CSI or something. It's like, but she said there's all kinds of psychology of people like why do people watch the same thing over and over again? Like, why do they watch the same movie 1,000 times, listen to the same song 1,000 times? And it's kind of like that, like safety zone. It's like, this is what feels good. It's not going to rock my world. It's not going to like change anything. I don't want to change anything. I don't want that kind of experience. I don't need to be like leaving my wife and like getting a new job and like maybe flying to Dubai and like, you know, that's not the kind of experience I need from this music. And I wonder a little bit like if that's part of the reason that the old music's also, you know, sticks around.
Oh, clearly. No doubt.
You know, so there's a little bit of like, well, I know what this is. I'm in a good spot. It's not going to mess anything up for me. Because some music does have that effect, you know, or any art, right? Like you can either just sort of like ignore it, or like you have to encounter it and like deal with it, you know? Like you can't ignore it in a sense. Like you kind of just be like, all right, we're going to have to do this. We're going to have to hash this out right now. Like I've heard this now. And it could be all instrumental too, or it could have words in it, or like he gave the example of Machine Gun by Jimi Hendrix from the Band of Gypsies thing, where it's like nobody had heard anything like that, and like he was in the military, and like even the words, like all these kind of things, like the audience was just like, what the, you know, or like Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, first time, like people are like rioting when they hear it because it has this sort of effect on you, but it's like. He's like, people listen to Machine Gun and like, they had to be like, what am I doing with my life? Like, how am I, like, you had to like reconcile it somehow, you know, and maybe that wears off a little bit if you're not there in person or not there during the time, but like when it came out, that's sort of part of it. You know, Vietnam was going on, all these kind of things, right? So like, it's like, why am I getting shot at? Like listening to music. I don't want to get shot at. I just want to listen to a song. Like, well, why is somebody shooting me? You know, like that's the way that you feel when you listen to that song a little bit. So like, anyway, yeah, it's just kind of a fascinating thing. So like most people probably don't want that, or they're not willing. It's like asking people about like, why are we here? What's the why? Let's talk about the universe. Like people are like, I don't want to talk about the universe. Like it's too big to even talk about. I don't want to talk, and I'm not interested in that conversation because then I have to deal with like dying and like all these other things. Like
the bigger questions.
The bigger questions that no one wants to really face. So as an artist, it's kind of like one of those, what kind of music do you want to make? Do you want to make the kind of music that does challenge people, that maybe is going to make them have a mental breakdown or whatever? And it could be about, like, he wasn't even like, it could be a love thing. Like for him, his perspectives, like there's the love songs where it's like everything's great and she's perfect and aren't we a perfect couple and everybody lives happily ever after. But then there's the songs that are like, yo, does he have a job? Does she have a job? Like, did she go to college? Like, is she actually working on anything? Like, well, like, what kind of bills did she have? Does she have a ton of debt? Does he have a ton of debt? Like, did his dad used to beat him up? Like these are kind of like the things, like real things to deal with. And you like, I don't know. Anyway, those are the songs that we appreciate in hindsight as well. That's sort of like, you're like, man, that's a pretty serious song, but like it means a lot to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But also isn't the feel good kind of like songs that a lot of the stuff that we listen to is. So anyway, I found it kind of interesting too, and sort of related to all this as well.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, we're always going to take some type of artistic and expression and use it as comfort. That's just human nature.
Right.
And we're always going to take some of it and artists are always going to take some of that and use it to shove our faces in mud, to wake us up to some extent. That's kind of like the mentality of it to an extent. It's not necessarily an FU to everything as much as it is of a peeling back of the the rose tinted glasses.
Yeah.
With things. And I mean, I don't begrudge the people that have used that word a lot today. But I'm going to keep using it. That's my word of the day. Not really. I'm just making it the word of the day.
That's the name of your next album, Begrudged.
Yeah, Begrudged. That might work. But the whole point is that, like, sometimes you do need to tap out. Sometimes you don't need to hear.
Oh yeah. It's a balance.
It's not even necessarily I remember a friend of mine who's a priest made a point. He's like, all things in moderation, including moderation. So it's
Sure.
like, yeah, I get that's good point. And that's kind of like the idea with when you encounter art that's challenging. That's exactly what it should be, and you should get hit in the face, but then at the other times you need to go and just watch something to tap out for a second.
Sure.
It's like what's the way to put it? With my brother made this point when I decided to really get into music seriously. I was like, I'm never going to play video games again. I'm done playing video games. I need to dedicate all the time to music. And he's like, dude, you need an outlet. He's like, you don't really watch TV. You don't enjoy sports. You don't do this. You don't do this. You don't do this. You don't do this. Like everything about you is wrapped in the music. That's a recipe to burn, man. You gotta have some type of thing to go psst and decompress.
Yeah, sure.
So I do, and that's my guilty pleasure every then and again. Which is, when I like right now, I have 2 solo concerts, that choral thing, and I'm recording that the project album.
Which
and
it's barely started. If not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm recording it in the sense of still getting mic positions to where I'm happy. In fact, I reached out to a couple of friends. I'm like, you got to help me with this. I can't do it myself. Like me miking somebody else, not a problem. I'm happy with it. Myself, I'm losing the mental game in that respect. It's like I'm just not getting the sound that I want. And there's always that underlying thing in my head going, maybe it's just because you're not that good. Which is like, screw you, boys.
Yeah,
go
of course.
screw yourself. I know that I've gotten some great sounds for myself at one point, but it's now I'm at a point where it's like I reached out to somebody. I'm like, I will pay you to come to my house and help me set up these microphones, just so I can get it done and I don't have to worry about it. So we're working out times for that, just to come in and do it. Because like the last things I recorded, they sounded good, but I got new microphones and I want it to sound better. There's a particular type of space that I want in the recording. So I don't know where I'm going with this. I lost track of where I was before, but it's late. So we should probably start to wrap things up because I'm starting to... It's not the Knob Creek.
What's the day again?
What day is it? It's almost the next day. That means I'm not gonna pay super hard tomorrow, but it's gonna be a rough one. So I already pity my students.
All right, so if you hear this, if you made this far,
congratulations.
Tune into my show on February 2nd if I actually get this
February
out
2nd, it's the 2222222.
It's a full acoustic Night Terror show. First time ever. I'll be playing
and you get to see my guitar.
That's right, and I'm borrowing Adam's guitar for some of it too, so it's going to be pretty killer.
Cool. Yeah, I'll probably... That's tomorrow. No, tomorrow's the 1st.
It's Wednesday. Yeah.
Wednesday.
2-2.
Oh, it had to fall on a Tuesday. We really missed that,
No, yeah, that's right. If it was a Tuesday. Maybe the 22nd is on Tuesday.
I think, yeah, because there was some meme floating around where it's going to be 2/2/22, or 2, maybe it's, you know what?
Let's
find out. Let's.
Do we really need to know?
I do need to know because we're ending on such a high note.
Feel free to tune out at this point.
Yeah, let's see. We're scrolling down. Yep. It's Tuesday, the 22nd of February, 2/2/2/2022. It's boom. There it is. It's all set. So yes, it does hit. All right. At least we got that going for us.
That's right. Well, somebody is a gig that day.
Yeah. If anybody does, you got to mention that.
That's right.
So they probably will if they're a decent performer. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to our first official crosstalk here. So
more to come,
and more articles and complaining. So all right, catch you all later.